This quote is from Charles Francis Potter, and he's the author of Humanism, A New Religion. He says, education is thus a most powerful ally of humanism, and every American public school is a school of humanism. What can this theistic Sunday schools meeting for an hour once a week and teaching only a fraction of the children do to stem the tide of a 5-day program of humanistic teaching? So he's saying, the church isn't doing a very good job of preparing their students for public school. And so when you're hearing about humanism 5 days a week and you're getting this very short class in Sunday school that probably isn't addressing some of the things that they're learning in school, it can be a problem. So science. Here's the definition that you'll find in the Merriam-Webster dictionary. The state of knowing knowledge as distinguished from ignorance or misunderstanding, a department of systematized knowledge as an object of study, something that may be studied or learned, like systematized knowledge, knowledge or a system of knowledge covering general truths or the operation of general laws, especially as obtained and tested through scientific method. Such knowledge or such a system of knowledge concerned with physical world and phenomenon, natural science, and a system or method reconciling practical ends with scientific laws. So I have a question for you. What have you noticed about this definition of science, or the definitions of science? Just walk up to the mic, or however you want to do that. Anybody have thoughts?
It's a lot of different.
Say that again.
There's a lot of different descriptions, definitions.
Okay.
Like there's so many.
Yeah, and they all seem to just talk about knowledge. And one thing that's noticeable, it only has to do with the physical world. So we'll find out some things about science from history here next. All right. Well, we also have the scientific method. So this is how people practice science, and this is what they think science is by observation, question, research, hypothesize, experiment, test, hypothesis, draw conclusion, report. And so this is what people always point to as doing science. And one thing most people might not know is the scientist who created this is Francis Bacon, who is actually a Christian. So nobody ever likes to talk about that. So in this book, The Genesis of Science, How the Christian Middle Ages Launched the Scientific Revolution, the author James Hannam says, today we talk about science. We have in mind a clear specific meaning. We picture a laboratory where researchers are carrying out experiments, but the word science once had much a broader definition than it does now. The word comes from scientia, which means knowledge in Latin. Science encompassed all intellectual disciplines, including politics, theology, and philosophy. Theology was famously the queen of them all. The study of nature as a separate subject was natural philosophy. So science used to be called natural philosophy. An interesting fact, the word scientist was not even coined until 1883 because only then did people realize it was needed. Science had become an autonomous subject that was completely separate from philosophy and theology. Although the assumption about God and creation had been necessary for science to get it this far, it is not so successful that it no longer needed them. But modern science was born. There could be no scientists. So in the past, science used to encompass a lot more than just what we do in the lab. It included philosophy, theology, and politics. And so it's more of a recent thing that we call it science, and it's left to doing research and testing things. So science. Systems of knowledge of the physical and material world based on facts obtained through observation and experimentation. That is what people think science is today. The view that hard sciences alone have the intellectual authority to give us knowledge of reality. Is that science? No, that is scientism. And then, so science is the only way to truth. Science is supreme. That is also scientism. So what is faith? So if you heard of the four horsemen, they were atheists. I think a couple of them are now dead. So I think the first two are still alive. The last two are both gone. They have written books and they really don't like religion, although Richard Dawkins now calls himself a cultural Christian, which is kind of interesting. So Richard Dawkins wrote The God Delusion. Sam Harris wrote The End of Faith, Religion, Terror, and the Future of Reason. Christopher Hitchens wrote the book God is Not Great, How Religion Poisons Everything. Daniel Dennett wrote Breaking the Spell, Religion as a Natural Phenomenon. And so Richard Dawkins writes, faith is the great cop-out, the great excuse to evade the need to think and evaluate evidence. Faith is a belief in spite of every perhaps because of the lack of evidence. And Sam Harris writes, every religion preaches the truth of propositions for which it has no evidence. In fact, every religion preaches the truth of propositions for which no evidence is even conceivable. And then Hitchens writes, religion is poison because it asks us to give our most precious faculty, which is that of reason, and to believe things without evidence. And then Daniel Dennett wrote, there's simply no polite way to tell people they dedicated their lives to an illusion. And so these atheists would tell people, faith isn't based on evidence or you're living in a delusion. So, I mean, that's not what I believe as a Christian, and I hope that's not what you believe as a Christian. So when we look at the Bible, faith was described as, in the Greek word pistis in the Bible, faith is understood to refer to personal trust in God, a trust based on evidence. And then J.P. Moreland, a philosopher at the Talbot School of Theology, says, a confidence or trust based on what one knows. So it's not a blind faith. And so John Lennox, he has a few PhDs and a great Christian man. He's done a lot for the faith. He says, indeed, Christian faith is a response to evidence, not rejoicing in absence of evidence. The Christian apostle John writes in his biography of Jesus, these things are written that you might believe. That is, he understands that what he is writing is to be regarded as part of evidence on which faith is based. The apostle Paul says, what many pioneers of modern science believed, namely that nature itself is part of evidence for the existence of God. For since the creation of the world, God's inevitable qualities, his eternal power, and his divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that men are without excuse. It is no part of the biblical view that things should be believed where there is no evidence, just as in science, faith, reason, and evidence belong together. So, Christians shouldn't have a blind faith, and their faith should be based on evidence. So historically, the scientific enterprise as a sustained and organized movement emerged in Christian Europe during the 16th century. People from every culture studied the natural world, and yet modern science emerged in Europe, which was a civilization primarily shaped by the Judeo-Christian worldview. Why? For 300 years after the scientific revolution, Christianity and science were thought to be completely compatible and mutually supporting. Science has to give credit to the Christian worldview for the birth of science, and scientists thought they were discovering design in nature. So let's talk about the Christian worldview and Christians that did science. We have Copernicus, Kepler, Newton, Boyle, Galileo, Harvey, and Ray. And so when I was in school, there was never any mention that any of these people were Christians. And I wonder why. So Kepler said, the chief aim of all investigation of the external world should be to discover the rational order which has been imposed on it by God, and which he revealed to us in the language of mathematics, thinking God's thought after him. To God there are, in whole material world, material laws, figures, and regulations of special excellency, and of the most appropriate, those laws are within the grasp of human mind. God wanted us to recognize them by creating us after his own image so that we can share his own thoughts. Newton wrote, "This is the most beautiful system of sun, planets, and comets, could only proceed from the counsel and dominion of an intelligent and powerful being." Galileo wrote, "The Creator endowed us with senses, reason, and intellect, intended us not to forego their use and by some other reason to give knowledge which we can attain by them." So Christian theism affirms, 1, an infinite, eternal, and personal God that created the world ex nihilo, meaning out of nothing. 2, the rational nature of a creator to orderly, uniform, and good. 3, mankind was made in the image of God in Genesis 1:26 and 27. We are capable of observing, reasoning, and ultimately discovering the intelligently created order. And so the Christian worldview gives us basis to do science. The Christian worldview made scientific inquiry possible. Christians believe from Scripture that the heavens declare the glory of God in Psalm 19:1. They had a reason to explore nature. The natural world points us to the God who created it. And so in history, there are 3 eras of perspective: pre-modern, objective foundation for truth, meaning, purpose, and value is found in God. Modern, the objective foundation of truth, meaning, purpose, and value is found in man. And postmodern, the objective foundation from truth, meaning, purpose, and cannot be known for sure. So we're living in a postmodern world now. So David Hume, he made naturalism, I would guess say popular, so there was no more need for God. So this was back in the 18th century, and it could even be traced back to ancient times. Darwin, in 1859, he provided a plausible mechanism of naturalistic creation in his theory of natural selection. And so naturalism was able to gain cultural dominance with Darwin's theory of evolution. He provided a plausible mechanism to the origin of life. So this is the reason why that science moved into not having to believe in God for origins. So just a reminder what evolution is: it's change over time, universal common descent, natural selection, and random variation. So in the 19th and 20th century, things started to move towards naturalism, first by the highly educated elites, and then to society. Naturalism became the dominant view in the academy by the mid-20th century. So what is naturalism? The doctrine that the natural world is all there is. And George Gaylord Simpson, a Harvard paleontologist, says, "Man is the result of purposeless and natural process that did not have him in mind." And so today, naturalism is the dominant view. There's a sense in which there's a sense in which materialism is the religion of our time, at least among most of the professional experts in the fields of philosophy, psychology, cognitive science, and other disciplines that study the mind. Like more traditional religions, it is accepted without question, and it provides a framework within which other questions can be posed, addressed, and answered. And this was from John Searle, who is a philosopher at UC Berkeley. So these are distinct features of naturalism. It includes monism, materialism, physicalism, scientism, Darwinian evolution, anti-supernaturalism, atheism, agnosticism, and secular humanism. So at the university, naturalism is an unquestioned assumption that underlies not only the natural sciences, but other academic disciplines such as humanities and the social sciences. So naturalism has impacted science, theology, psychology, economics, ethics, and more. So this is, I used to do these missions with a particular organization. And so this was at Colorado School of the Mines, and we went around and just asked scientific questions. And so we asked them, what drives the universe? And most of that campus, or at least the students we talked to, believed that it was driven by chaos. So kind of tells you what's going on in the academy. And then we asked about the origin of life. Is it blind chance or intelligent design? And more people believed it was blind chance. Then I did this at San Jose State, where it looks like more people thought that science and faith weren't at odds. So that was looking a little bit better. And then, so at San Jose State, we asked, is science the only way to truth? And most people said no. So it looks like a lot of people there weren't believing that science was supreme. So, although many of our leading universities have historically been founded to train pastors and missionaries, such as Harvard, Yale, and Princeton, it's just not the case anymore. So, if you didn't know, Christians are pretty much the reason why we have the modern university today. So, in the 19th century, historians say that a revolution within American higher education during the 19th century and the major sources was science. In the name of reform, college and universities became more secular, and the Christian faith lost its central place within higher education. So, the making of the modern university, Julie Rubin, she writes, in 1884, Harvard officials assumed that the two phrases on their new seal were compatible. They had inherited a worldview that strongly associated truth and religion. The term truth encompassed all correct knowledge. Religious doctrines, common sense, beliefs, and scientific theories were all judged by the same cognitive standards. And so most educated Americans at the time thought that religious claims and common sense notions were at equal footing as a source of knowledge along with scientific theories. So nobody really had problems with science and religious claims. So how did everything change? Rubin tells us that from the early 1900s, the American Liberal Arts College became the modern research university. So she talks about three overlapping time periods. You have the religious stage, the scientific stage, and the humanities and extracurricular stage. So in the religious stage, the main thing was imparting wisdom and knowledge, developing students spiritually, morally, and politically so they might serve God, the state, and the church well. And then it moved into the scientific stage where empirical knowledge became the only knowledge. And then humanist and extracurricular stage, the responsibility for moral and religious development went to the humanities. So they kind of took out anything religious out of the university and then moved it into things like campus ministry or extracurricular activities. So it was primarily removed away from any teaching in the modern university. And so what's this cultural shift? So what it is the fact and value distinction. So people's values are considered to be private, subjective, and a matter of personal opinion and culturally relative. And facts only belong in the public, so objective, independent of anyone's opinion, and obligatory for everyone. And so your values are to be kept to yourself, and facts are the only things that should be in public and taught in the university. So that got rid of religion in the university. So science equals facts and faith equals private beliefs. So naturalists think that science has the power to explain all things. Peter Atkins says there's no reason to suppose science cannot deal with every aspect of existence. So, a question for you guys. So, do you agree with this statement that science can explain every aspect of existence?
No.
No. Can you give me like an example of something science can't explain?
Miracles.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, Alba. We said emotion, or I said emotions.
Okay, cool. Yeah, somebody in the previous group said something about love. So yeah, science, you can't put love in a test tube and measure it and tell you how it works. So cool. All right. So dogmatic claims of scientism. Only what is testable by science can be true. Do you guys see any problems with this statement?
Yes.
Say that again.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't understand you.
Oh,
Well, the supernatural cannot be scientifically tested sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's immaterial, right? Well, this statement right here, it actually can't be tested in a test tube either. So it is a self-refuting statement. So can we say this is a philosophical statement or a scientific statement? It's a philosophical statement. So, 3 features that make a statement self-refuting. The claim establishes some requirement of acceptability for an assertion, such as having to be empirically verifiable. So, you can't verify that statement. The claim places itself in subjection to a requirement. Then the claim falls short of satisfying the requirement of the acceptability that the assertion itself stipulates. It refers to itself. So, when we look at the statement, only what is testable by science can be true. 1, does this statement establish a requirement? Yes, it says that something must be testable to be true. And then, does this statement place itself in a subjection to the requirement? Yes, it purports to convey truth. So, does this statement fall short of satisfying its own requirement? Yes, this is a philosophical statement about science that cannot be tested by science. So, all right, so can science answer everything? So, John Lennox, great Christian man with many PhDs. So we can't say Christians are dumb because he is a very educated person. He says, take the claim that only science can deliver truth. If it were true, it would at once spell the end of disciplines in schools and universities for the evaluation of philosophy, literature, art, music, outside of the scope of science, strictly so-called. Could science tell us whether a poem is bad or a work of genius? Scarcely by measuring the lengths, the words, or the frequencies of the letters occurring in them. How could science possibly tell us whether a painting is a masterpiece or a confused smudge of colors? Certainly not by making a chemical analysis of the paint and the canvas. The teaching of morals likewise lies outside of the science. Science can tell that if you add strychnine to someone's drink, it will kill them. But science cannot tell you whether it is morally right or wrong to put strychnine into your grandmother's tea so that you can get your hands on her property. So there's something that science can't explain, right? And you got morals and ethics. So here's some worldview questions. Does God exist? How did everything begin? What's wrong with the world? What's the ultimate solution? Who am I? Where am I? Why am I here? Am I living a good life? What happens after I die? So do you think science could answer these kinds of questions? What do you guys think?
It's survival of the fittest. Strong wind.
Yeah, so they could try to answer these questions, right? Yeah, they could try, but I don't think there's going to be very good answers. All right, cool.
Brain came from meaningless random chance. What can you personally justice logic?
Mm-hmm. All right, so this is in the book Mind and the Cosmos. So Thomas Nagel, he is an atheist, and I mean, the whole title of his book says Mind and Cosmos, Why the Materialist Neo-Darwinian Conception of Nature is Almost Certainly False. So as an atheist, he thinks evolution has problems. So he writes, in the present climate of a dominant scientific naturalism, heavily dependent on speculative Darwinian explanations of practically everything, and armed to the teeth against attacks from religion, I've thought it useful to speculate about possible alternatives. Above all, I would like to extend the boundaries of what is not regarded as unthinkable in light of how little we understand about the world. So he has problems with scientific naturalism, and that's kind of interesting because he is an atheist. He's not a Christian. So has evolution put God out of a job? So in science, we know there's a fossil succession, but there are problems because there is the Cambrian explosion. So did you know the fossil record does not show the slow gradualistic evolution predicted by most Darwinian scientists? Leading paleontologists acknowledge that most of the major animal groups called phyla appear abruptly in the Cambrian explosion. about 530 million years ago without clear evolution precursors. As many as 20 unique animal phyla appeared during the narrow window of the time, the Cambrian explosion, only 5 to 10 million years ago. So this is a problem for Darwinian evolution because he talks about it being a slow and gradual process where you see in the Cambrian period, there was an explosion of major animal groups that were actually very complex. So it wasn't this slow progression from simple to complex. So that causes problems for the evolutionary paradigm. So you could find out more about that in Darwin's Doubt, written by Stephen Meyer. There's another book that talks about a lot of things that are taught in our current textbooks. Jonathan Wells writes a book called Icons of Evolution, Science or Myth, Why Much of What We Teach About Evolution is Wrong. So he kind of goes and debunks these things that we see in textbooks and still haven't been corrected. He talks about the Miller-Urey experiment, Darwin's Tree of Life, homology, invertebrate limbs, Haeckel's embryos, Archaea, I can't pronounce that word, the missing link, peppered moths, Darwin's finches, four-winged fruit flies, fossil horses, and direct evolution from ape to human and as the ultimate icon. So if you read this book, he will explain to you a lot of what's taught today has been debunked. All right, so back to Thomas Nagel. He also writes, it would be an advance if the secular theoretical establishment in contemporary enlightened culture, which it dominates, could wean itself off of the materialism and Darwinism of the gaps to adapt one of its own pejorative tags. I have to say that this approach is incapable of providing an adequate account, either constitutive or historical, of the universe. So once again, he's talking about his issues with materialism and Darwinian evolution. So whatever one may think about the possibility of a designer, the prevailing doctrine that the appearance of life from dead matter and its evolution through accidental mutation and natural selection to its present forms has involved nothing but the operation of the physical law cannot be regarded as unassailable than a well-confirmed scientific hypothesis. So what's the real problem? The real problem is a worldview problem, how we see the world. So naturalism and theism are at odds. Naturalism is intrinsically atheistic because it sees nothing outside the natural world and material world. So science wants to put an end to religion. The warfare is between two philosophies. So we have theism, where we believe that God has created the universe. God is outside of time, space, and matter. And then we have materialism, where God doesn't exist and all there is the universe. So you could see why there are problems when we talk about science, because view science from a material naturalistic point of view. And for us Christians, when we think about science, we think God is creator of everything, and that's why we have science. So this is the main problem that we see. It isn't science is a problem or faith is a problem. It's the worldviews that oppose each other. So when you line up naturalism, Christian theism next to each other, you see how they really can't work together. So naturalism says there's no God, no supernatural entities. Christian theism says God is an infinite, eternal, immutable, morally perfect, and triune, the transcendent creator and sustainer of all things. And then the way science is looked at in naturalism is science is viewed as the only reliable method, which is strong scientism, or best method, which is weak scientism, for obtaining genuine knowledge about the cosmos. And for the Christian, authentic knowledge is available through God's general created order and special revelation, redemptive action. So we see that God has created things, and we also see that God reveals to us special things through his word. And so the cosmos, Carl Sagan says, the cosmos is all that is or ever will be, or was or ever will be. And then our Bible says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, Genesis 1:1. So you could see how those things are opposed to each other. And so what's the real problem? Philosophical naturalism is a problem. Science is equated with evolutionary theory, and anything that disagrees with it is seen as irrational or unscientific. The nature of science discusses theories, even if dissent from prevalent theory. Science flourishes when opposing several advances are put on the table. So, if you say something against evolution, people think you're crazy, right? I don't know if any of you guys have experienced that in your classrooms. All right, so Ed Fazer, he has this illustration about metal detectors. And so metal detectors, of course, they detect metal. But if you use a metal detector, you wouldn't be able to detect other things like paper or plastic. So just because the metal detector doesn't detect that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So basically, science only looks to the material thing. It can't detect supernatural things. And so Alvin Plantinga, he writes, if you reject theism in favor of naturalism, this evolutionary story is the only game in town. The only visible answer to the question, where did all this come from? How did it all get here? Even if the fossil record is at best spotty and at worst disconfirming, this is a story, the only answer one can offer. From a naturalistic perspective, these are the questions. So, are science and faith at odds? Alistair McGrath says, science is incomplete. Science isn't wrong. It needs supplementation. Science has limitation. Science cannot answer everything. When people make the claim that science is the only way to truth, they have stepped out of science and have made a presumptive philosophical statement that makes their very own statement self-refuting. There isn't even a scientific process to test their very own claim. Science does not invalidate Christianity, and Christianity doesn't invalidate science. I don't think it is either you believe in science or you believe in religion. That is a false dichotomy. And then R.C. Sproul writes, when we oversimplify theology or oversimplify science, we encounter many difficulties between the two. Science is a complex enterprise, so is theology. The relationship is to be studied closely and deeply if we are to discover an ultimate harmony between them. And St. Augustine wrote, we must show our scriptures not to be in conflict with whatever our critics can demonstrate about the nature of things from reliable sources. So, science and faith are not at odds. Science can point us to good reasons to believe in God. So, I can open up to questions now.
What we should do is everyone come to this table, please. Isn't that a good idea, Jane? We're going to put everybody
Yes.
right here.
Yeah.
If the cord is long enough, it's just barely long enough. Okay? All right. Now you got a real intimate group, Jane.
Cool. This is fun. I feel like I'm sitting at the table with you guys.
You are.
Okay, so earlier on in your talk, you were talking about the difference between like science, the claims between science and scientism. Could you give us a definition of what scientism is?
So scientists is basically saying the only way to knowledge is through science. Yeah.
Is humanism just an explanation for like what would be going on in public schools, or is it like actually like a real new religion that people are following?
So humanism is a worldview, thinking that, everything is like everything comes from like humans, like the way we think about the world, all the answers come from humans. So there's no idea of God. So basically, it's based on human rationale.
Like it's a religion if God doesn't. They want to claim they have them.
Yeah. Yeah, like most of them wouldn't say
it's yeah.
Most people wouldn't say, oh, it's a religion because they tend to be atheists. And so atheists tend to believe they're not religious. But, if you live a certain way, you believe certain things, it ends up being a religion. So they just wouldn't use those words. Yeah.
Jake, I'm not a student. Scott dragged me into this ministry here.
He dragged you. Wow. Were you kicking and screaming?
That's So, but I believe it's in talking with him that a number of students who are studying here, they're Christians, but then they feel a lot of pressure to hide their Christianity
Yeah.
in order to get their degrees and to get their jobs. So what kind of advice would you give to
I think,
Christians that feel fearful?
yeah, I think a lot of Christians do, because once, your professor finds out you're a religious person, you're easily written off. Like they don't even want to deal with you. I've had experiences like that where, you know, um, they knew who I was, and then I was applying to grad school, and then, I put a component of faith in there, and they never responded to my email ever again, even though they had given me glowing recommendations before that. And I was like, okay, because I am now a Christian, they don't want to help me out. And so I think the best thing for Christian students is to just ask really good questions to their professors or even their classmates. I mean, we shouldn't be ashamed of the gospel of our faith. I think we should be able to be Christians because the university is the market of ideas. And so I think, yeah, it is a challenge, but if anything ever happens to a student where they are dismissed because of their faith, we do have lawyers that will work for us, and it's the ADF. And so I think Christians should live their lives boldly, but also not be obnoxious about their faith. I think some people want to challenge people, but they're not prepared to challenge their professors or their teachers. So I think Ratio Christi does help students in that arena. I think a lot of prayer should go into this too. Like how should we live our life at the university? We shouldn't hide it under a basket like the Bible says. So I think if students are just more prepared to share their faith in the public arena, I think, and intelligently, because I think a lot of professors thinks we're just idiots. So I think if we could present Christianity in a rational, logical way, I think we might get a better hearing. But I think students just need to challenge their professors in ways that they could get their professors to think a little bit more. Yeah, I mean, there's great Christian philosophers out there, and like Alvin Plantinga has been doing a great job of presenting the worldview in the philosophical arena where more people are becoming Christian. So I think if we're winsome, have good reasons to believe, I think we can make an impact. I mean, I've heard stories of some students who are Christian who, shared with their professors, and professors have come to faith. So I just think we should be a little bit more prepared in the public space to have those conversations and just really pray about them. So I don't know. I think, especially at a time like this, I think more people are open to spirituality. I think in the 15 years I've been with Ratio Christi, when I first started, people tended to be more atheist agnostic. And as time has gone by, they've realized there's really no meaning and purpose in atheism or agnosticism. And so they've become more open to spirituality. And I think we just need to point them to Christianity to have the best answers for their questions. And I think it really is just about having good conversations with people. And that's the only thing we can really do at the university.
Good response.
I have a question.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different because I'm a parent.
Mm-hmm.
And thanks, Scott, for inviting me. And hello, Brother Adam.
I'm glad you're there. You're being involved. So
I homeschool my children.
Uh-huh.
And I came later in the presentation. Toward the end, you had a slide that said R.C. Sproul said that it sounded as he was saying that there should be a relationship between science and faith. Mm-hmm. My question is this. So obviously when my children go to college, they're going to be exposed to what we're discussing here. They're going to be exposed to what is being taught. And they're going to be challenged with that, no matter how, well versed they are, they're going to be challenged because of the
Mhm.
pressure that they'll be
Yeah.
under. So right now, you know, I've got one with just like the basic science, and the other one is in biology. And the question of evolution, you know, is bound to come up. And
Yep.
so do we give, in your opinion, how would you present the scientific materialism? Should I or would you present the science and the like the evolution and the creationism with equal value, or what approach? Because
So
they're going to be, because I'm thinking that when they reach college, they're going to be presented with it,
yeah.
you know, full force.
Mhm.
And then, and it's like, I don't want them to, you know, go in completely ignorant of it, but at the same time, I don't want them to like be totally, you know, blindsided, and I leave them ill equipped. But you know, and at the same time, I'm like, how much scripture will cover the challenges that they're going to be faced with? And I know I'm sounding all confusing right now, but I don't know if you're understanding my question. Like, how would
I
you
get what you're saying. Yeah.
how would you
So
approach it?
I think the best way you can prepare your student for the university is to give them all the views. So you want them to know what the Bible says. And there are different views in the Bible. You have young earth creationism and old earth. So yes, you should present both of those to them. And you should also present to them what evolution states or teaches, because, you know, they are going to walk into that. And I don't want your kid to walk in and be like, I never knew this, you know, like you should prepare them as much as possible. Let them, you know, logically, critically think through it, see the problems with each position, and that's the best thing you could do, is just prepare them for what they're going to face. Because the problem is, a lot of the time, a lot of students get to college and they never heard about these arguments. They never knew that Christians had positions on creation, on the age of the earth. And so, you know, when you get to the university, it's usually an old earth. And so they're just like, oh, the only thing I ever heard was maybe young earth. So I think presenting all three views, there's lots of great resources. There's different ministries. You know, you have Answers in Genesis for the young earth position, and you have Reasons to Believe for the old earth position. And then you could also just give them the straight secular evolution. And then you have intelligent design, which is another position that doesn't really give you a young earth or old earth position or creation position. So you have creationism, you have intelligent design, and you have evolution. And I think teaching them all of the positions would be helpful to them, and let them, you know, look at the Bible, see what the Bible has to say about it, and let them come to their conclusion on which position most aligns with the Bible.
That sounds amazing. That's like they'd be very well equipped to enter college and handle any challenges. That thank you.
You're welcome.
How many minutes? 15 left?
Yeah.
Oh, that's more than I thought.
The only thing I would say to the parent, there are programs where you can send your kid for a weekend or something like that, where they're going to train them in apologetics.
Yep.
They're going to train them to answer the big questions and to have, you know, some answers, you know, how to get ready for college, those kind of ministries. I mean, that's something I'm sure Scott could do too, you know. He could help in that arena, just sitting down with your kids.
Yeah, there's a few ministries that come to mind. You have like Impact 360, you have the reality conferences with Stand to Reason, you have, I think, Summit, where they could go take a summer and study before they head to college. So there's like really intensive like boot camp style apologetics that prepare students for college. So you could do your research to see which one your kids might want to join before they head off to college.
I will say I personally was homeschooled K through 12, and
Mhm.
my mom taught me apologetics. And the thing that was most helpful was that in 8th grade, she gave me like all of Darwin's ideas. And at the same time of giving me Darwin's ideas, she tied it along with our the creationist response to Darwin's evolution. But she presented the evolution so that I understood all of the concepts. So when I got to college, I wasn't like, oh, I've never heard of that, and then become a poster child of why Christian homeschooling is an actual school.
Yeah. Yeah, your mom did an awesome job. Kudos to your mom.
Yes. Yes.
I just have like a little comment that came into my head, but Alba, I will recommend summer camp. I did summer camp for so many years, and it's really healthy for kids. And there's also a lot of Bible Christian summer camps that are around. I think it's very beneficial.
Well, which one did you go to?
I went to one, well, I was going to a YMCA camp for many years, and it's not strictly like religious, but we do have chapel every morning, and we would like pray at meals, but it wasn't religious. But I went to this one in Blair, and it was just a weekend trip, and they do it for kids too,
Spring
and that was really good.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah, and Michindo.
Yeah.
Mishindo's pretty good.
Well, big. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
seeing that are.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody for all their input. Very helpful. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you got to prepare your kiddos.
Like, can you tell us some stuff about your chapter, Jane? Like, how's your chapter going?
No, it's
What's
good.
What's
It's
it like?
So, actually it's been good. We fluctuate from anywhere from like 10 to 30 people a week. So it just really depends on the topic and if they're busy with studying. But yeah, last year was a little smaller. It was a little rougher last year, but I think, we're going in the right direction now. It's campus ministry, the ups and downs, the roller coasters, the high attendance, low attendance. So right now, majority of our group is Christian, which is kind of interesting being for Utah. Like, in the past we'd get all kinds of people, but now we have a lot more Christians. I think a lot more Christians are moving to Utah. So I'm thankful to God for that, just because there's not a lot of Christians here. But also the University of Utah has the least amount of LDS members. So, a lot of people, like, you guys usually get to a city, it's a little less religious, even though the LDS headquarters is downtown. But yeah, our chapter is going great. We're just building a core group of people, and one of our it's really interesting. Our group, we have like your really smart science, mechanical engineering, all those kind of engineering people. And then we have a bunch of girls that are like super popular and like like fun. So it's kind of interesting to have like a very, very wide spectrum of students, because in the past you'd always get the really intellectual Christians who like to talk about these things. So it's kind of cool to get other people in who are kind of more general and not very specific to like apologetics. So that's been kind of a blessing. So hopefully we could grow our group, because like I think Ratio Chrissy is a very niche group, and so we tend to get the same kind of people. So my approach has been a lot more like a little bit more of the cultural apologetics and not the heavy hitting like philosophy stuff, just to like get people's feet wet a little bit and then get them into the deep end. So that's kind of what we're trying to do here. Yeah.
Did Charlie Kirk speak at your university?
So I actually did start the chapter at Utah Valley University. So that's another school. So so that's where he was killed. We did have our chapter director and assistant chapter director and our intern and some students that were there when that did happen. So yeah, it was a really rough time here in Utah. So I've been hanging out with the UVU chapter a little bit more since that happened, since I oversee all the chapters here in Utah. But, a lot of our students were present at the event and got to witness that. But yeah, that chapter, what's interesting about Utah, Salt Lake County is the least Mormon, and then you go to Utah County, which is the county next to us, and it's the most Mormon. It in Provo's about 99% Mormon, and so our chapter at UVU has very little Christians. So that one, it's a little bit harder to do that. So you have you get Mormons or you get former Mormons in that chapter, and then you have your couple of Christians. So yeah, but yeah, we're having you guys know Greg Laurie? He does the Harvest Crusade. Yeah, so he will be doing a Harvest Crusade here on November 16 at UVU, where Charlie Kirk was assassinated. So it'll be interesting because we've been praying for revival in Utah for a very long time, and we're hoping this might be the beginning of that. So I've seen people come to faith since Charlie Kirk was assassinated. So there are things that are happening here in Utah.
Fantastic. I heard our next Ratio Christi Symposium Conference is going to be in Utah. Did you hear that? Ratio.
Yep, I'm helping plan it. So we're
Yay.
getting all those details together. Yeah.
Say what that is, because maybe everyone doesn't know what
Yeah.
it is.
So it's a gathering of all our chapter directors and students to just be together, because I think a lot of us don't really get to fellowship with one another. And so, usually get some speakers to encourage us in how to continually do campus ministry, and maybe you'll get like some popular apologists. And then I think we're trying to do a little bit of evangelism while you guys are here, just to put your feet in the ground here, just because this is a mission field. So I'm pretty excited that it's going to be here. And I mean, Utah is beautiful. I mean, the mountains are here and they're just in your face all the time. So I've never lived in a place where you're just like, oh my gosh, those mountains. And I just don't get sick of it. So, but it's going to be in the summer, so it's a little hot.
What are the dates?
I believe they have June. It's either the first week of June or the third week of June. Not quite sure if we nailed down the exact dates yet, but it's actually pretty close to where I live. So I think Corey is reserving a space at a church here, and then there's quite a few hotels around the church. So yeah, it's a beautiful place to explore too. So if you guys want to explore things while you're here too.
What city?
So the church is in Draper, Utah. So it's in Salt Lake County. It's about 20 minutes south of Salt Lake City.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Can't wait. I'll be there.
Cool.
Students are invited.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yay.
You have to climb some mountains too.
Yeah.
Yeah, this would be our first gathering since 2019, I think, because after COVID happened, we've never had a symposium since. So I'm kind of excited.
I'm glued.
Mm-hmm.
Unglued.
This is
God, dude, watch out.
this isn't really a question, but
Mm-hmm.
it was very interesting to me. Bye, China.
Hi, China.
Buying China.
When you pulled those like four horsemen up and had their books, I actually had the yellow one. I think it was called God is Dead.
Mm-hmm.
God is not
Not
great.
great.
God is not great. I had that one, and I truly believe that if God was not real, that I would have read that book, because I had it for several years
Mhm.
and I never ended up reading it. And then I bought it. I bought it because I was like, I want to get to the bottom of this, whatever.
Mhm.
And I never ended up reading it. And then I found it like a few weeks ago and just threw it away. And it's like, I truly believe that if God was not real, then I would have read that book.
Yeah, I read a little bit of it in all of their books, and like they're all just mad. It's just like
Yeah.
they take a lot of verses out of context, and they're just like mad at religion, and they make all the religions. They clump all the religions together. They don't even make distinction between beliefs. So that's like the problem with those books.
Yeah, his brother was his drunkard.
I
Oh
truly,
yeah, yeah. Mhm.
They like sort of debated each other, but it's really interesting.
I
He's
truly,
like completely the opposite.
I truly,
Interesting household.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Richard Dawkins, he's now claiming to be a cultural Christian because he sees the good things that have come out of Christianity. And I think he's more worried about Islam taking over the world. So now he's saying I'm a cultural Christian. Yeah.
Yeah, if he had to choose, he would choose
Yeah.
Christianity. Who would
Yeah.
not? But
Yeah.
I mean, what's the
I want to say something. I just wanted to point out, I grew up Catholic.
Mhm. Me too.
Went to Catholic school all the way up to 8th grade, and my friends continued on through high school. And I remember going also to like open houses to, to like high schools and stuff. And one of the things I noticed was, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, is that they taught evolution in science.
Okay.
And I always thought that was so weird that a Catholic school would teach evolution in science, as opposed to creationism. Them being Catholic and all, it would, I would assume that they would go the route of creationism. And I thought that was weird. Have you any knowledge of that?
I guess it always depends on who's leading the Catholic Church at the time. So it's like you get a different pope, he might believe in something else, so they go with that. So, I mean, I think, yeah, when I was Catholic, I never heard anything about creationism either. So I guess it really just depends on who's leading the church because, whoever has authority gets to say what it is.
It's
I guess they see them as, like you said, really, they're compatible. Science and religion
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
are compatible. And the fact that there's changes in organisms, no one denies that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with microevolution. That just tells you like things adapt to their environment. So that part's okay, but the whole story of like simple to complex is a different story.
Yeah.
Mhm.